as I mentioned, we will our focus will be on the urban automated driving, and of course, urban automated driving is already facing a lot of challenges. Nevertheless, the major challenge of them all is safety. Especially when we're talking about urban automated driving, for level 3 and beyond, we need to achieve, most probably for most of the software most of the components of the system, we need to achieve ASIL-D. We have been seeing, for example, a lot of demos in the industry showing urban automated driving, but these are demos. And there is a big difference between going from a demo and then bringing the vehicle safely to the street and taking also liability for that. And this, the borderline of that is basically safety. So, but what is safety and how can we achieve it? So we can decompose safety into two main elements. So first thing is safety by design, and then verification and validation. So safety by basically doing all the activities during the design of the system and also the design of the software to think of all the scenarios or all the faults that might happen in the system and try to tackle them, try to avoid them in our design. And then verification and validation is testing the system after the implementation and making sure that it is adequate to launch as a product in the market. Here we categorize the automated driving into three categories. So first one is on the lower part is shuttle buses or restricted areas. For example, like shuttle buses in airports or park lots. This is rural areas and highways. And the third one is urban automated driving. And what we see here is that safety and the complexity of the system when it comes to urban automated driving is by far much more complex, and the safety requirements is much more higher when it comes to urban. And this goes hand in hand with the cost. So take an example, what we decomposed in safety, the verification and validation. In order to do verification and validation, we have to test. There are two phases. There is the pre-SOP and there is the post-SOP testing. So for the pre-SOP, we need to test different environments like sill and mill, hill, hardware in the loop, and vehicle in the loop, and also to do field monitoring. And taking urban automated driving, the variations of the scenarios and the maneuvers and also weather conditions is much more, and then is an order of magnitude from the highway or also from shuttle buses, for example. And this shows the challenge that we have in terms of cost, because doing all those activities and doing a testing that we can say this is enough testing for us to launch the product in the street is much more higher than the other cases. On the other hand of the safety, the other element, which is safety by design, we look, there are of course a lot of activities that have to be done during safety by design. Also, there are already standards in place like SOTEV, like ISO 26262. One of the key elements to achieve safety by design is redundancy. And redundancy also is an important factor to achieve a fail operational system. So looking at avionics, which is already automated autopilot for a very long time, much more earlier than the automotive. For example, the Boeing 777, they have already for the autopilot triple systems, three systems running in parallel with three separate power supplies, three separate sensor set and computing power. However, it's good to look at avionics. However, avionics is a bit different, of course, from what we have in automotive, because the volume is much less from avionics to automotives. And we cannot afford to be that generous when it comes to redundancy, like in avionics, to do this with automotives. So it's clear that the challenges to achieve safety through either safety by design or testing is much more complex, of course, in automotives, and definitely very complex in urban automated driving. And given what we have just said, I would like maybe to ask a question to the audience. when do you think we would be able to see level 3 and beyond automated driving in urban in a profitable model? And I want to stress on the word profitable, because we have been seeing for the last few years a lot of companies, OEMs, tier ones, and also startups and universities, they are able to demonstrate the urban automated driving. But the question is, when are we able to bring this profitably in the market and also safely in the street? So, Ina, would you kindly maybe trigger the poll? Thank you. Maybe we can have like 20 seconds or 30 seconds for that. I just see a question: who should be profited? Basically, the program who's launching this. I mean, for example, if we're talking about an OEM who is having a program for urban automated driving, like a robotaxi, when can we see, for example, a robotaxi be profitable, financially profitable to the organization or the company which is launching this service? So there is a comment, if it's happening with Tesla, and not really, Tesla is level 2, it's not level 3. Okay, maybe Ina is, I think it's, if you can kindly show the results of the poll. Okay, thank you. So as I expected, and also I would put my vote also to the same bucket. I mean, I don't think we'll be able to see level 3 and beyond automated driving in urban profitable in the streets in the next at least 5 years. And I would even bet on further timeline. And the question is, I mean, also especially to audience who are working in urban automated driving programs and knowing how much these programs cost in terms of hardware, in terms of having people working on that. Do we really think that we can have enough budget to spend on these programs all that time before seeing a profit out of it? So I would maybe go to so I think we need to tackle the problem at hand, or the challenge at hand, in a different way. We have been for a very long time, and also many of those programs and efforts have been looking into the vehicle and trying to solve the problem in the vehicle from inside the vehicle. And we need to do something different here. We need also to look maybe a little bit outside the vehicle, as well as looking in the vehicle as well. And which brings us then to the project, sorry, I wanted to present. This is one of the projects we did in Tieto. This was in Finland, in Tampere, city of Tampere. On the right-hand side, we had some cameras mounted on the roadside, which was able to do pedestrian intention prediction using AI, using pose estimation. And with that, we were able to see the intention of the pedestrian if they are going to cross the road or not. Also, on the left-hand side here, you see we have mounted cameras on a cross-section, on an elevated infrastructure, and we were able to see pedestrian crossing the road. And with that, we were able to see or categorize the pedestrians into 3 categories: either they are in the middle of a crossing, the cross-section, or they are, the zebra crossing, or they are intending to cross, or they are not crossing. And we were able, using V2I communication, to convey this message to the driver through a warning on the dashboard. So through this project, we found out of the main benefits we got out of this project. 2 key points. First is that mounting the camera on that high elevated point, or this vantage point, gave us a much higher or much wider field of view, which enhanced the safety a lot, because this is completely different from what the vehicle is able to see. So this gave us a different point of view from what the vehicle can see, and this consequently then improved the safety. Second thing is the cost, because we were able, with the same sensor, to share or to perceive the environment and share the cost of the camera and also the computational power to compute and to analyze the pedestrian across the different vehicles. So that all the vehicles crossing this crossroad were able to share the cost of the sensor, which made us think, okay, why don't we take this further and expand it to expand the benefit of these two benefits that we got from this project. Which brings us then to the main idea of this presentation. What we would like to present is basically using the infrastructure to expand the usage of the infrastructure for more than just aiding signals. I mean, infrastructure has been also being thought of as providing aiding signals to the vehicle, but we would like to increase this usage by even providing a complete redundant perception. And what I mean is that if we are launching an automated driving vehicle, probably we will have two sensor sets to achieve ASIL D. Or there are other, of course, ways to provide this redundancy as teleoperations, for example, but this redundancy will cost some money. And what we're proposing here is that looking at a complete city and then making roadside units and equipping them with a full sensor set that is able to do a complete perception and also with a computing power, not only sensor set, but rather also a computing power. Also, they are able to communicate with one another. They're able to cover the whole city, like mobile networks, do tracking and collective perception as well. And then communicating with the vehicle, not only an aiding signal, but rather a redundant environment. So what we're proposing is basically also to remove the cost or to get rid of the redundant system, redundant perception system, to be clear, from the vehicle and offload this to the infrastructure. So in addition, I mean, the benefit to that, as we mentioned, is first that here, when we talk about redundancy in perception, it's giving a true redundant point of view to the vehicle, because it's not just an additional sensor set or a separate sensor set with a different power supplier on the vehicle, but rather also a different point of view. This is one thing. A wider point of view, because not only that these sensors are already on an elevated or a vantage point from the road, rather also they are getting a collective perception from all the roadside users, roadside units, sorry. In addition to that, also capitalizing on the cost point of view we talked about. And looking also a little bit deeper into the cost point, we did an exercise to calculate if this will be of cost benefit or not. And what we did is that we took one of the cities, we took the city of Zurich, and we saw how many kilometers there is in terms of urban roads in the city. We also saw how many cars or vehicles already registered in that city. And we are jumping here a bit into the future. We are thinking that, okay, what if all those vehicles, I mean, in the future, we want to automate them on the road? What would be the cost in that case? We calculated the cost of the sensor set both in the vehicle as a redundant system and also in the infrastructure. And we calculated both CapEx and OpEx. Also, we calculated the OpEx over 10 years. And it was quite clear that doing this in the infrastructure is much more cheaper and will save us a lot of cost than doing it in the vehicle. However, this is also not coming without challenges. Of course, there are a lot of challenges that comes to that, because it's also we are looking into sharing information over the network. So one of the challenges is latency and bandwidth, because we are talking about sharing information over the network, like an environment model, from the infrastructure to the vehicle. And of course, one of the challenges is latency and bandwidth, because we need the data to be as fast as possible, because we are depending on it. And second is enough bandwidth so that we are able to send this amount of data to all the vehicles on the road. However, we see also the way of tackling it, or what is coming now in the market, is 5G, which will help us to tackle those challenges. Other challenges, of course, cybersecurity, because we are sharing a very critical information over the network, and we need to take care of securing this data coming from the roadside to the vehicles. Third is standardizing also the data exchange, because we are talking about all the vehicles in the road on the city are exchanging data with the roadside. They need to be standardizing the data model, and also the APIs that they are communicating with the RSUs. And this is not an easy task also. This is something that needs to be tackled in order to achieve something like that. So those are the main challenges. I mean, I'm not saying that these are the only challenges. However, those are the main challenges that comes into our head. So at that point, I finished my presentation. I just want to leave with one more thought. The idea, as I mentioned in the presentation, we took the project of an aiding signal through the infrastructure, and we tried to expand it a little bit towards doing a redundant perception. And I would like to leave you with one more thought, which is expanding this idea to a further idea. So not only to give a redundant perception or use the infrastructure for redundant perception, rather do the full perception there. So equipping the roadside units with primary and secondary sensor set, and also computational power to do the perception with the redundant system, and also offload the planning task. So one of the benefits also of offloading the planning task there is that we will have the planning centralized in one area. So like platooning, for example. And in that case, the roadside unit will not just send a message about the environment model. It will just send an ASIL-D trajectory, and the vehicle will only be having then a controller to execute this trajectory. So I came then to the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mohammed.
Okay, I don't hear. Let me try.
Okay. Now?
Can you try again?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for this very insightful and interactive talk. We have here a couple of comments. Maybe these are not really questions. Let's see, maybe you would like to share thoughts on that too. The first one is, considering L3 as urban public transport system in any city has never been considered as profit-making business. The need for urban transport is to improve infrastructure. So would you like to comment on that?
If I get the comment well, that we will never consider urban automated driving as a profitable, or we will not target them as profitable. I didn't. Maybe I read the question better. Yeah, it is true. Public transport in general, like if you're talking about underground systems or so, these are not profitable. Usually, governments are supporting those, but I think this is different from what we're talking about. We're talking about, for example, we have a lot of OEMs, tier 1 startups working on robotaxi model, and also like car sharing companies like Uber and Lyft. They were working also before in urban. So I think they are not doing this to support the public, rather to get profit. So what they have in their head definitely is to get profit out of this.
Thank you. We have another question. ISO 21434, SOTIF, and so on are process. What is with real testing, safety, and secure on V2X? What would you recommend? You will find this question in the general chat. Shall I repeat it?
So actually, in general, even I mean, first SOTIF and ISO 26262, and also the new cybersecurity, it's giving guidelines. It's of course a process talking about how to, or a guideline how to do both testing and also safety by design. And it's also actually a good question because it's still, I think, an unanswered question about testing. The question I also had in here, maybe I'll just return back. So it is still a big question, this one, how much testing is enough to achieve a targeted safety? I don't think this question, I cannot answer it now on the spot, and I don't think in the industry it's clear to anybody how much testing is enough. Of course, putting V2X in the equation is also making it more complex, and this is one of the challenges. But I don't think also, on the other hand, testing in the vehicle is still an answered question that we can say, okay, this is enough testing to get it to the.
Thank you very much. We also had a couple of comments. We have here also a question. How would be responsibility distributed in case of a fatal accident involving and caused by a robotaxi?
That's also a very wide question, which is still, I think, a hot topic in the field. I don't think it's also clear distributing this liability. Of course, going from level 2 to level 3 and beyond, a big part of the liability, if not all, goes on the OEM or whoever is launching the service. It can be split afterwards between the OEM and the tier 1 or whoever is making the system, but it is a clear thing moving from L2 to L3 and beyond. The responsibility is no longer on the driver's side, rather on the system designer and the system implementer.
Great, thank you. And a couple of some attendees, they mentioned Mobileye, that that Mobileye showed the ambitions to have level 4 by the middle of this decade, and that IAA Mobility Mobileye showed off a level 4 robotaxi. Would you like to comment on that too?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw also this in the latest event in IAA, and also a lot other. I mean, Waymo also, like Waymo, a lot of programs have been already declaring that they are going to launch robotaxis, and we haven't seen this for a lot of time. However, it's always a demo. I mean, even Waymo, which is, I think, it's quite ahead of the others in this area, it's still a demo, and still you have a safety driver either through a teleoperation or a physical safety driver. It's completely different. As I mentioned in the beginning, there is a big difference between doing a demo and showing capability and going in the street and taking liability on it and leaving it without a safety driver in the back.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Mohammed. It was very interesting and nice conversation and very interactive talk. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your thoughts with us. The attendees, if you have any questions or requests, please contact Mohammed directly or find some time, to visit the virtual booth of Tia2Every on our platform and get in touch with the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you.